forward to another meeting. I thought there were maybe some specialty meetings that we could hold locally. And I thought of Joe and the amazing job he did for Ray Phillips on this project, and how little information there is in general on the tinfoil machines. So, how many know Joe Rinaudo by name or personally? If you don't know Joe, he's one of the most amazing people you'll ever meet, and one of the nicest, and one of the most talented. And what we're going to discuss today is the tinfoil project, but you may have also heard of him from the Stuhl Hauser episode, from his hand crank phonograph, pardon me, a hand crank 1909 power projector and the silent movies he shows. You may have heard him from his Rinaudo's Reproductions, where they do reproduction work for Disney Under the Sun. So that's, I think, the segue how Ray Phillips came to you to work on these machines. Mm-hmm. It's now the important stuff.
Oh no.
Professor Joe Rinaudo.
Oh my gosh. Hello, good afternoon. All right, so we'll get started with this, I guess. So I'm supposed to push this computer. It doesn't have a crank on it, so I push the bar, right? Okay, here we go. Are you ready? Ooh, gee. Something's happening, I hope. There we go. Now I'd like to take you through a journey of making the Ray Phillips tinfoil phonographs. When Ray Phillips decided to make a production run of the tinfoil phonographs, he called me and asked me if I would be the foreman on his project. Here I am, Joe Rinaudo with Ray Phillips. Good old Ray. The first thing we did was photograph and photo document his original Edison, good heavens, phonograph. From top to bottom, along with sound effects. Then we took it apart and took measurements of everything and proceeded to make molds of the main body and all of its parts for casting. You can see some of the patterns up there. After the molds were made, we took it to a foundry and had the parts cast in bronze. Casting is still done much the same way it was done in Edison's time. Bronze ingots are heated in a furnace until they are molten. The molten bronze is then poured into the molds. After the bronze has cooled, the castings are removed and cleaned up somewhat and are now ready for our work to begin. Casting is anything but perfect, and we need all of the parts to be as perfect as possible if they're going to record and play properly. One of the most important things is to make sure that the base right there is flat. And there's a very highly technical state-of-the-art way of flattening these bases, which we discovered. Observe. Uh-oh, look out. That also works on your Fords. Well, now that you're awake, let's continue. Sorry about that. The plates are sanded, filed, and made ready for drilling and machining. To machine the bearing posts for the shaft to slip through, the parts are mounted in a mill, and then a small hole is drilled where the shaft will go. After that, a slightly larger hole, then a larger, and still a larger hole, to get it drilled within 1/10,000th of an inch of the diameter that is needed. The part is reamed by hand to get it to the exact size needed. So now that's half of them. Other bronze parts that are machined are the reproducer stands, the lockdown levers, crank assemblies, and the two halves of the reproducer itself. Oh, and remember the grooves in the edge of the reproducer? They're machined with a special knurling tool as well. Now we're going to go on to make the steel shaft and the mandrels, which is what the foil actually goes on. Here you see the parts ready for reassembly for testing all the measurements to make sure they're in 1/10,000th of an inch of each other. The parts are made from steel rods that are slightly larger than is needed. The rod for the shaft is placed in a lathe and then is surfaced with a cutting tool to the proper diameter. With a different tool, the threads are cut into one end of the shaft, as you can see here. Since you can only cut a small amount of metal at a time, it takes 15 to 20 passes to get to the proper depth. Then the shaft is removed and the other end inserted into the lathe to cut the notch for the crank handle at least 25 times. You don't need all that noise. This can be a silent film. Yeah. There we go. Where's Dean when you need him? Well, 25 passes later or so, it looks like it's about the right size. Is it? Is it? It is. Okay, now there's the shafts ready to go in the mandrels. Now we have already cut the mandrels and gouged out the sides to the proper diameter and drilled the holes slightly smaller than the diameter of the shaft. The mandrel is now heated. You can see our highly technical heating method until it expands big enough so that the hole will slip over the shaft. The shaft must be inserted quickly because after only a few minutes of cooling, the mandrel will contract tightly on the shaft. By the time you are done heating the last of the mandrels, the first one is just about cool enough to put back on the lathe. First, the face is surfaced to the exact diameter needed. Then the rough edges are removed with a file. Now we have to make sure that this plane, the face of the mandrel, and the sight line of the shaft are in perfect alignment, about within 1/10,000th of an inch, or the phonograph will not work. As with the shaft, a cutting tool is used to make the 15 or so passes needed to put the threaded grooves into the mandrel. And for those of you who enjoy watching paint dry and golf, observe. And that's a lead-based metal that they used to use many years ago that cuts very nicely, machines beautifully. We're assuming that's what Edison may have used. So now the mandrel is ready to have the edges chamfered, and the final step is polishing the mandrel on a polishing lathe and its shaft as well. Once all the metalwork is done, the phonographs are now assembled to make sure all the parts fit properly and that they all work. Then we take them apart again and send them out to be painted. Now, while they're being painted, we will take the wooden horn, and we're going to make the wooden horn, I should say. We're going to take a chunk of wood, we're going to place it in a wood lathe, and cut the sides square with a knife, and cut the face off square to the sides until it's absolutely smooth. Then we change the cutting tool to a knife blade that's the exact diameter of one of Ray Phillips' original horns, which we've previously cut, and this will give the horn its outside shape. Once that is done, we hog out the center with a third blade to give the contour on the interior. Voila, one horn. Once the parts are back from the painter, it's time for pinstriping. It takes a keen eye and a steady hand and lots of patience. Here's Ray with the pinstriker, Jamie Storm. One by one, the pieces are given their unique accents. As the day wears on, we are that much closer to a finished product. It took Jamie almost 2 days to pinstripe 12 phonographs. It's an enormous amount of work and patience. He had close-up photos of Ray Phillips' original to copy from. And there we go, ready for final assembly. Our last task is to make the reproducer. The reproducer is the most sensitive and delicate part of the phonograph, and special care must be taken in this process, or the phonograph will not work. After all, it is a scientific instrument. Spring steel, mica, and a needle are adjusted ever so slightly until the reproducer is just right. There's that hammer again. After we've assembled all the parts, Ray stops by to see if the phonograph will actually work. Well, Ray, what do you say? Shall we see if these things work?
I'm ready when you are.
All right, let's try it. All right, now we're going to lay that foil down flat on the mandrel, as flat as we can. Bring her around. Rotate the mandrel around here, best we can. All right, let's wind her back. Close the gate. Get our little collecting horn up. And Ray, you were saying that these machines shouldn't be cranked too slowly. They should be fairly rapid, so we don't compress the recording. Hello, hello, hello! Mary had a little lamb, her fleece was white as snow, and everywhere that Mary went, her lamb was sure to go. Right? Maybe I ran out of voice there, but now we roll the mandrel back. With trembling hand, we close the gate as Mr. Edison did some 130 years ago to see if we've trapped the human voice mechanically.
The vibrations are beautiful.
Yeah, they came out pretty good. This thing might work, Ray. What do you think?
I'm waiting.
Hello, hello, hello! Mary had a little lamb, her fleece was white as snow, and everywhere that Mary went, her lamb was sure to go.
Oh, well.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Ray.
Good job.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Edison, wherever you are.
And thank you, Joe, for doing what, and you're nice workman for doing such a wonderful job on these.
Well, I just want to say one thing. If it wasn't for Mr. Ray Phillips, collectors would not have an opportunity to have these and to use them and to experience them. So thank you. Thank you for all the collectors in the world.
It's a pleasure, and I hope you all have a lot of fun with them.
You know, when I finished the first phonograph, Ray came over to hear it. Well, he came over to see it. And when he looked at it, he says, "Oh, that's magnificent. Oh, there's going to be a little," and he says, then I said, "You want to hear it?" He goes, "They play?" He didn't expect him to play. Am I supposed to pause something or just walk away? I can just move away. I don't exactly know what's going to happen, but let's see what happens here. Well, in 1877, when Edison invented the phonograph, the race was on to perfect it and get it out to the public. The response from his men and people that heard the first human voice recorded was so great that Edison knew he had a tiger by the tail. This was one of the greatest discoveries of the century. This is a 1912 Powers Cameragraph motion picture machine. This is the first Powers model that was not really portable. It was designed for booth projection. This ran 35mm nitrate film, state of the art. This projector means a lot to me. It represents the highest form of the art of the period, 1912. When you actually smell the oil and the film is burning through the gate and you see the reels turning and the gears turning and you hear the fans cooling the bulb, you realize, wow, this is it. This is the show. This is the event. This is the ground zero. It's happening right here. And that was Edison's great hope, was to meld art and science. And he actually did it. He took that frieze off the Pantheon and he put it onto the screens of the world. And I think that's one of the greatest achievements. So how did I feel? Wow, I was awestruck, is how I felt. It's really just exciting. I can't describe it.
Hello everybody, I'm Huell Hauser, and you know, usually there is a pattern to the way we develop a story. We start off by saying where we are, and then we meet the person we're going to be spending time with and kind of tell a little bit about what the story is all about. But on this particular story, on this adventure, we're not doing any of that. We're breaking all the rules and starting off with a bang. Hit it, Joe! Joe, I think we've got our viewers tuned in,
I think so.
wondering what in the world is going on.
A lot of everything.
Can you imagine if somebody was listening to this on the TV from another room? They've all run in now to see what's going on. The dogs are howling. The cats are scurrying under the couches. Explain to everybody. Well, now let's get back to the pattern of the way we develop a story. First, we're in Montrose, right? Your name is?
Joe Rinaudo.
Joe, and tell everybody, stand up here for a minute. Tell us what it is we are looking at, what we have just heard, because I have never seen anything like this before, and I have never heard anything like this before.
That's a sad testimony to these machines. This infernal contraption is called an American photoplayer.
A what?
A photoplayer.
Photoplayer.
And originally, the company that built this was in Oakland, California. The Van Valkenburg brothers invented contraptions like this about 1910.
And what was it for?
It was to narrate photoplays, spelled P-H-O-T-O, photoplays, which were motion pictures. So this machine actually sat down in the orchestra pit in front of the screen in the very early silent movie theaters, and it took the place of an orchestra. It was economical to buy. You pay about $3,500 for a machine like this in 1912, let's say. And in a year, it paid for itself.
Now, would it go along with the silent movies, or was this entertainment before and after the feature film?
Yes, to both questions. It was a program piece where you could do intermission pieces, which was something like the 12th Street Rag, which you just heard. You'd never do that during a movie, of course, unless it was like the Ben-Hur chariot race or something. But it also was used to narrate silent films, and that's why you have both. You have two spool boxes. One roll is playing while one is rewinding, so you can cue up the next scene.
Let's put another.
Sure, let's do something fun. These are called picture rolls.
Yeah,
These
because that last thing you didn't have enough energy to it.
No, of course not. We need something with a little more energy. Well, here's one called a drunk soused spree. So if you had, let's say, just for the sake of argument, if you had a scene in a film where you had, let's say a guy was drinking and he was drunk and he was walking down the street drunk. Well, the operator would have to know the film. You'd watch the film the night before the show.
Would movies, when they sent out the movies, suggest certain roles that would go with that particular movie?
Usually not. In some cases, feature productions would send out sheet music, and that would give the operator a cue or an orchestra leader a cue.
Yeah.
However, these were usually relegated to comedies and for the shorter and smaller films.
This is a one-man orchestra.
This is a
Look
one-man
at all
orchestra.
this over here.
Yeah,
You've got drums.
You have bullhorn, chime, locomotive. You can do. Train across the tracks. You got wind, crash cymbal, bass drum, tom-tom, gunshot. You got triangle. How about a klaxon horn? Two automobiles coming at each other. And then you have a doorbell, cowbell.
This is a workout to
It is a
just
workout.
do this.
It's an aerobic workout of 1912.
This is amazing. Can you bench up again and do us
Sure.
another
I'll
one?
give
This is an amazing thing. How long were these around?
Unfortunately, well, actually, fortunately, they were around from about their heyday was about 1911 to 1926. And in 1926, they were absorbed by one of their baby companies, the Robert Morton Theater Organ Company. Photoplayer went broke basically in 26 because there were rumors of sound was coming. And the other problem was, they'd saturated the market. They made 4,500 of these things. Only 35 survive today.
And one of them's in your living room.
One of them's here.
How many of them do you think ever were in living rooms? They were too expensive for the average person to buy.
Yes, they would have been too expensive. Although
Plus, the neighbors must love this when you go to town on a Saturday night.
the only argument I ever get complaint I get from neighbors is that, would you leave your doors open so we could hear it, please?
Yeah, because it must spill out over the whole neighborhood here.
It does a little bit.
And so you've got this one. This is perfectly
restored.
preserved, restored. And how many are left in the whole world.
In the world of this brand, this make, American, I've found about 35 is all worldwide.
That's it.
That's it, out of 4,500 made.
Oh,
Less than
wow.
1% survive.
And they were in use primarily from
11 to 1926.
So it was just over a 15-year period. That was it.
And then they disappear because it was this big heavy thing down in front of the screen. It was the first thing to get adiosed when sound came in. And the rolls, they don't sound good on a player piano. They sound very good on an organ because they're cut for piano and organ. But another thing is I'm trying to find all the picture rolls ever made. No complete collections survive. Like the photo player, we're losing our history right here.
All right, let's hear it.
All right.
I want to get energized
Okay,
again.
well, it won't be as wild, but the ending will. I'm going to play something here. This is three. The first one is called Drunk Soused Spree. The next one is called Mushy Music.
Mushy music.
Mushy Music. The man that's been drinking is going to meet a cute little girl.
So you can mix the two rolls?
Yes, yes. And the reason you had two spool boxes and they used player piano rolls, a very clever idea the Van Valken brothers had, is that you can free the operator's hands to change the organ stops to fit the screen action, and his hands are free to do all of the sound effects.
I've never seen anybody work as hard as you do on this thing. Really, this is a workout.
It is a workout.
All right, you got the
Ball horn. We got a.
All right, let's get you going
All
here.
right. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to give a quick demonstration of three types of mood music used. First one, Drunk South Spree, Mushy Music, and then the finale, a villain comes along and steals his love, and the last roll is called A Real Race. R-E-E-L.
I'm ready.
Okay, here we go.
That's how dry I am.
And this gave the mood. This fit the screen action.
What are you doing with your feet down
That's
there?
a sustain pedal to give the piano a little more volume.
So you'd have piano pedals.
And yes, you have the pedals loud and soft. You also have, you can program the organ, turn off the flutes, have a principal and a violin. Now we go to, those are your tubas, which gives a little sillier sound.
Yeah.
Now he meets his cute little girl. Now he's falling in love. Oh my goodness. Now we reach.
This is mushy, isn't
This
it?
is mushy. He's just gazing at her. Now there's a villain lurking.
So you're going to work the villain into mushy love.
Now the villain grabs her and pulls her into his car. Oh my God. That gives you a sample. of 3 different types of
What
program
is
music.
it about this thing that so captivates you? I could stand here and listen to this all day long.
In the catalog for American Photo Player, it says the sound of the machine will thrill the adults and it will please the children so. Because it sounds like a merry-go-round. It wants to make you laugh.
Yeah.
They had fun toys, didn't they?
You're out of breath.
I am. That's a lot of work. Can you imagine doing Ben-Hur? And they did. You know, they had larger. This is one of the smaller machines. They had the largest model was 22 feet long and had 600 pipes.
See, I think this would work today. Not necessarily in a movie theater, but big restaurants, family restaurants could have this with somebody playing up on a stage. This is just fascinating stuff.
We need to get these. Everybody that hears it says the same thing you just did.
Yeah.
Where can I go and hear one of these? You can't. They're all in private hands or unrestored.
And as if it could get any better, when you come to Joe's house, not only do you hear music, but you actually see the old films on, well, this is the most interesting old projector I have ever seen, and this, again, is an original.
It's an original 1912 Powers Camerograph projector.
1912. So these were one of the early projectors.
Very early, yeah, pretty early. They certainly had projectors before that, but these were extremely sophisticated. This model actually came out in 1909 as a Model 6. This is a 6A, which would have been more or less used in a booth.
And this would have been out about the same time that the photo player would have been out. So
they are contemporaries.
all right, now let's see what we're gonna. You've actually got a movie. What are we gonna be seeing?
This is a film that a friend of mine gave me, George Hall, who's a film historian, and he got it from the Library of Congress. It's a very rare thing from 1902 called Life of an American Fireman.
And this is an Edison film.
This is an Edison film.
And you were telling me about Edison and the way he made some of these early films.
Yes, in many cases, Edison, of course, would do things like send his cameramen and place them by firehouses. And when there'd be an alarm call, they would start cranking and take pictures of the horses, and they'd actually chase the firemen to the fire.
So this is kind of an early documentary in some sorts. It's kind of a mixture of documentary and acting.
That's correct. In fact,
1902.
1902.
And before we start the film, you've got a slide projected up on the wall here, just like they would have done in the movie theaters. And this one says, "Ladies and gentlemen, please remove your hats." And in today's terminology, it would also add, "And please cut off your cell phones." So, all right, here we go.
Okay.
Let's get this thing
All right,
cranking.
here we
This
go.
is interesting just to...
Edison cranked, this film is cranked at about 15 frames a second. So with the hand crank, you can obtain about 15 frames right about there.
So the projectionist would have to know how to...
He would match the live
Crank.
action on the screen. He'd try to match the cameraman's cranking speed, and you could do that. You could do
so
that with
you
a
could
crank.
speed it up or you
slow
could
it down.
take it down.
That's right. That's right.
Okay, the fire bell rings and the firemen slide down the pole. Now, these weren't actors. These were real firemen, probably,
Chances
weren't
are
they?
these are real firemen. Edison would have gone to a firehouse in New Jersey and would have asked them to do a dry run for them.
And
for the
look
cameras.
at this. This is so wonderful going back in time to see this.
There's a dog just in the scene, and it's just wonderful. Truly a time capsule.
And when these movies appeared in those first movie theaters around the country, just seeing a film of a fire truck with the horses going down in a movie, there they come out of the firehouse,
coming out of the firehouse.
must have just captivated people.
Yeah, people were mesmerized by this magic. Truly, these movies were magic.
Now, can you make those horses go faster or
Sure.
slower? Because
Yes.
that's part of it too, isn't it?
Yes.
The projectionist, if he was tired, the horses wouldn't get to the fire nearly as quickly as if he was just coming on duty,
That's
right?
true. That's true. Or if he had a hot date that night, the last reel might go through the projector awful fast.
I bet you projectionists were known as either being fast or slow or good with...
That's right.
Because each one of these movies, did they have sections where they were supposed to go faster and
Yes.
slower?
If the cameraman, of course, would undercrank, the action would go faster, and he'd overcrank, it would go slower. and the projectionist had to watch for that, depending on the scene, and compensate with his cranking speed. Also, different cameramen were used to make one film, so you had maybe 2 different speeds. It would vary 3 or 4 frames. It made a difference.
And as you're cranking this thing, and I'm looking at the front, this is the...
That's a bow tie shutter.
This is the shutter in the front.
Shutter, which actually stops it hides the motion of the film moving down, advancing 1 frame.
Look at the way this is all engineered. Boy, it's beautiful to watch it.
It's amazing. Mr. Power, Nicholas Power, created this machine in 1909, this movement.
Look at all of these pieces,
flywheels and gears and cogs, and you know, Simplex used his intermittent movement. To this day, they still use his movement. It's very sophisticated.
All right, now the firemen have arrived at the burning house.
The burning house.
And was this this wasn't really a burning house.
That would have been staged by the Edison Motion Picture Company.
Uh-oh, there's the burning room.
There it is.
There's got to be a damsel. There she is. She woke up. She's looking out the window. She's overcome by smoke. She's fainted in the bed. Up. But there comes the fireman.
To the rescue.
Now, in the theater, people would have been cheering.
Probably cheering and screaming, thinking that this was real.
Okay, up. He's breaking out the window.
There it goes.
I bet you he's going to pick her up and throw her out the window.
Oh. Well, knowing Edison, maybe so.
No. No, he's carrying her out the window. Oh, wow. See, this is so exciting. And to think of this whole technology going on, that was exciting in itself.
Yes.
Regardless of what was on the screen, just the fact that this thing was cranking.
Cranking, all the independent parts are doing their job and tricking your mind into making still pictures motion.
And would there be music going along with this from your photo player,
Yes, there
or
would.
from a just single piano player, or what?
It would depend on the theater. If it was a very small house, you'd have maybe just a piano. If it was a very large house, you'd have perhaps a church organ in there or an orchestra. But in the mid-range theaters, you'd have a photo player that were too large for just a piano and too small for a pipe organ, and didn't have the money for an orchestra.
Boy, this is a workout too.
Yes, it is. Imagine doing 8 reels.
The film is interesting, but this collection of slides you have here in this box are so interesting because I mean, of course, there's no way for someone to know what those early movie-going experiences were like except through a person like you who's studied this. Before the film started, they had this series of slides they put up on the screen.
Yes.
Let's look at some of them now, because you've got an amazing collection. This first one says, if annoyed, when here, please tell the management, which means if there's a masher bothering a young lady in the theater, please tell the management.
And then he would be summarily bounced. Next slide.
Madam, how would you like to sit behind the hat you are wearing? So I guess back then, big hats were a problem.
Yes, they were. Yes, they were. Women had these big, flowery, feathered hats. Ostrich plumes, and they wouldn't think twice about sitting down and just destroying someone's view.
Oh, this is my favorite. This theater is scrubbed out. Scrubbed out.
Rubbed out.
3 times a week. Remember, there are ladies present. You would not spit on the floor at home. Please don't do it here. They really cut right to the message, didn't they?
They did.
They didn't mince words.
No, because they meant business. This was their livelihood. And, you know, people, this is all they had to do. This was entertainment. You know, radio, there was no television, radio, or anything. So people came out, and the theater had to be clean and have a good reputation, or they wouldn't come.
No spitting on the floor.
No spitting on the floor.
All right, next slide. Well, there was a theater etiquette people had to learn.
That's correct. That's correct.
Everyone has taken their hat off but you, and it's pointing right at somebody.
At someone, yes, yes.
So what was this all about?
Well, this particular slide would have been what they call a shaming slide. And they would stop the show, the projectionists would stop the film, they'd throw the slide onto the screen and maybe bring the house lights up, and then
You're kidding.
no, the individual, the offending individual, would usually be rousted quite well by the patrons who wanted the film to continue. So of course, when the lights came up, you'd see the guy with the hat on. They'd all start yelling at him, and it was
So going to a movie back then was, it could be a very,
It could be an emotional experience. It could be a bad emotional experience, but it taught the person, like you said, etiquette.
Oh, say, let us fly, dear. Where, dear? To the sky, dear. Oh, you flying machine. Jump in, Miss Josephine.
what are we listening to here?
Well, this is one of Edison's early phonographs. It's a gem cylinder phonograph, and this is the first portable phonograph. It could be taken on picnics in your Model T or in your buggy, and what you're listening to is Come Josephine in My Flying Machine.
Yeah.
Of course, in 1903, when the Wright brothers flew, we had a flying craze in the United States. So this song was written kind of in honor of that.
And this was a portable phonograph.
Edison was pretty practical. He knew that the public would want his invention, and he was trying real hard to find different markets.
Where do you get all of this? And this is your prize
This
right here,
this
isn't
is my pride and joy. This is a 1903 Edison Universal. This was one of the first this is the first production model phonograph used in, built by the Edison laboratories, used for home use and semi-professional. Now here you have carbon arcs. This is a carbon arc. This is like a welding arc. This could blind you and give you radiation burns.
it? Look at this was for home
This
movies?
is for home, and they were running nitrate film. This is nitrate film, a matter of a foot and a half away from a live spark. And as you know, if this reel, which is not nitrate, this is safety film, if this ignited, this whole room would go up. It's like napalm. It
Now,
explodes.
how many of these are in existence today? This should be in the Smithsonian.
I'm sure there's probably not more than a handful. I would guess 10, 15 of these. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. This came from the collection again of George Hall, who's a film historian, and he decided to break up his collection and honored me with this.
You know, you could spend a day in this house. Look, we've got, everywhere you look, you have these wonderful pieces of history.
Yes. You know, music never really left film. It's still in film, of course. And Edison was trying his darndest to match sound to film. He called it the melding of art and science. And he never really could accomplish it. Usually, Edison would have a phonograph playing with his early films.
So everything we've done here today is this melding of sound
With motion.
with motion.
The persistence of vision. Yes. Yes. Fascinating stuff.
From home to office, and what makes your life so interesting, Joe, is that you have figured out a way to combine your passion for old movies, old movie projectors, old movie music, into the way that you make your living.
That's right. My first lamp that I made for my business was a lamp I saw in a Laurel and Hardy film.
And here's the picture.
That's
right
the actual
here.
photograph
And
going
there's
by
the lamp up on the wall, and that caught your interest.
Caught my interest as a young kid, seeing these on early television, and I love Laurel and Hardy, and I thought this is just coolest stuff, and I reproduced a gas-electric combination fixture, and I named it the Laurel, named after Stan Laurel.
And this is the lamp that
Very
was
similar.
on the wall.
Yes.
Your whole workshop is like going back in time, and over here are more of these old projectors.
Yep.
Where do you find these things? In
Well-
old barns?
Well, junk stores, collectors have them, old projectionists have them in their garages. They make quite a few of them. And I find them in this condition. They're usually frozen and seized up. I take them all apart. There's probably a couple hundred working parts. Clean them, file them, redo the bearings, whatever has to be done.
and make them into a finished projector
To a
that
finished
works?
Working projector that's safe on film.
Look at this thing.
That's a 6. That's my next project. That's a 1909 Model 6 breadboard. Called a breadboard because the wooden board that everything was mounted on was like a breadboard.
People have never seen this before.
No, and we have to get more people exposed to this. This stuff has to remain alive or it's going to disappear.
Wow, well, you are doing your part. Boy, this has been absolutely wonderful. I'm not sure what I expected, but once you started playing that, what's it called again?
A photo player.
The photo player, I knew that we were going to have a good time. We've all heard some good music. We have learned a lot of film history, and we have literally met a man who is living his bliss. You figured out a way to put it all, combine it all. Your passion, your love, your work, your hobby, your life.
You know, at one time, Huel, in California and through the nation, this stuff was all commonplace. Photo players, projectors, and even the silent film itself and the music was all very commonplace, but people, like we do today, they took it for granted. And because of that, it got cast aside. And now we're losing it at an alarming rate. Out of the 35 photo players that survive, only 12 play. And you know how much silent film we've lost and how many projectors. The equipment is all disappearing. So I think we as a nation have to do something to preserve this stuff and see that the next generation will have it.
It's important.
It's very important and forgotten. The Hardy tinfoil is more than a phonograph. It is a piece of art. Thank you for allowing me to add it to my collection. It is difficult to explain how greatly appreciative I am. I know that I've shared this with Ray, but will explain why I purchased the machine once again. We started collecting phonographs in the early 90s. Due to space limitations, the collection needs to be redefined every few years. For the most part, I collect Columbia brand disc phonographs and phonograph-related photography. Why buy the tinfoil, you may ask? Well, my son Ethan shared my interest in phonographs. During his first few years in school, he would take me to school as his show and tell. In 2005, he took a phonograph to one of his high school classes as his show and tell. I knew he liked phonographs and was developing a strong interest in industrial arts. But 16-year-old boys do not talk to their fathers very much. It's just the world we live in. So it was my hope that the Hardy phonograph would provide a touchstone for us to talk a bit more. I ordered the phonograph on April 1st. On April 11th, Ethan was killed in an automobile accident as he drove home for lunch. The Hardy tinfoil is the last gift I purchased for him. He would have loved it. As I use the phonograph, Ethan will be beside me, watching, learning, and sharing. Wayne D. Holsnagel, South Dakota. Now, that floored me. I hadn't seen this letter. It was in Ray's files, and well, he probably handed me the file. I was flabbergasted to read this. I did call Mr. Holsnagel and thanked him for the letter. About a day later, Steve Oliphant walks in my shop with this. It's broken. He had picked it up. Of wood is driven in here to hold the foil on. So there's a little block of wood. That's what Edison had come up with, which I guess was better than, what were you saying, it was sealing wax, you figured?
Use sealing wax or they actually lift the foil. It's possible we even use shellac.
Wow, yeah.
But do you have metal-to-metal contact here between the
Yes,
shaft
there's
and
metal-to-metal contact there.
And so it's shrunk fitted?
It's very tight. Well, there's also a stainless set screw underneath here. There's a hole that's line bored all the way down through the manual and hits the shaft. And there's a flat on the shaft. So it's well disguised.
Yeah. Now, why didn't I do that originally? It seems like such an easy
I don't know.
fix.
The originals appear to be pressed on. Yes, sir, Mr. Pease.
Would there be enough of a size differential if you had packed the shaft in dry ice and chilled it
We could have,
and
perhaps.
slide it in and let it come back up to temperature
That could work, yeah, sure.
for your next?
For my next project.
You should have everybody take a look at the tag on there, because when on mine, I never knew that was cast into the
Oh,
base
that-
until someone told me. I went,
That's
look
the
at
other
it.
thing. Ray goes, I was making tags, I was actually having them stamped out and made. He goes, you can't do that. And I was going to put different serial numbers on each one. He goes, that's counterfeiting. And I said, but Ray, they're brass. He goes, no, 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 no. You have to capture, I want them all to be my serial number off of my machine. So we ended up with the bases. Because of that, we had to go lost wax on the base. So we had to make a new mold and off of his original pattern. See, what happened was we took Ray's original base, and we put it, this actually is a secondary mold. The primary mold is the one the iron base actually went in. Then what we did is we cast this off out of that mold. Instead of wax going into that mold, we cast a resin. And on the bottom of the resin, we put Ray Phillips Reproduction 2006. Now we made a secondary mold right here, this one, which has the Ray Phillips information on it. And that is melded with the top half of the first mold. Believe it or not, the shrinkage is minimal. There's hardly any shrinkage differential between the two. So the top part of this is the original half of the base. The bottom half is a copy made from the primary pattern, which we beefed up with paint to counteract the shrink problem of the two pieces. And then we ended up with this pattern, and this is the pattern that actually went to the foundry, and it didn't work. It ended up like this, which would be fine, except the label was blurry. So I was going to have the label milled off and new labels riveted on, and that's when Ray said, absolutely not. So to save cost, we didn't make the labels, but we had to pay an increased cost to have lost wax castings made. Unfortunately, they warped worse than the sand cast pieces. So that's why we were hammering them. We actually had to build an anvil with all these holes in it so you could lay them on that anvil, that plate that you saw Jay beating on, and then we just beat the living devil out of these things until they were as flat as possible, and then hand block sanded them to get them smooth. Yeah. Because if this is warped in any way, oh my goodness. Yeah, the whole thing, the dynamics would all be off the machine. Yeah.
From your experience,
Yes.
did you have any epiphanies about when it was done originally, some of the challenges that they must have come up against?
You know, you have to realize, yeah, I mean, the rumors are all around about how Edison went about this, and that he hired E. Hardy, I guess, to make the machine in Paris. Is it true, before I get into that, answer your question, but I had heard somewhere, and you guys, you're the experts, you probably know, that in Edison's book, Streak of Luck, it says something about Edison toying with the phonograph with money that he was supposed to be using to do the electric light, and that his investors he was afraid that his investors might get wind of him doing it, so he sent the prototype to Paris to have it manufactured out of his shop. Is there any truth to that? Is that why he went to E. Hardy? And then the investors found out anyway. I guess they saw one of the machines and then confronted Mr. Edison.
I'm not sure about that. I do know that, and let me get my head clear here.
Mm-hmm.
We're working better today.
Too much pizza.
Yeah, and thanks, Steve.
Yeah, thanks, Steve, for the pizza. Thank Mr. Olson for the pizza.
We had a lot of things going on very early on. Edison's British patent, and then there was also a licensing to run these various copy companies in May 1878. And then you have Hardy involved in there, so there was a lot of
Stuff going on.
there was a lot of market developing. I didn't think that that's probably more the possibility.
Why he didn't build it himself in the United
Well,
States?
You have to remember that the United States represented at that time a very small market compared to Europe.
You mean as far as manufacturing?
As far as being able to sell any product or to marketing
Now,
or exposure.
It's my understanding these were not sold. These were only examples that he shipped out for demonstration. Is that true?
No, the artists were actually
He
marketed.
sold these. These were marketed. What did they sell for?
Where's Renee's book?
That would be interesting. Yeah, what did they sell for?
No, you look it up.
However, the rates have gone up. In early February 1878, Edison made 2 prototypes of what has become the demonstration model phonograph, a small machine capable of recording only 50 to 60 words. Oh, that's the problem. But suitable for use as a novelty. On February 24th, he shipped one to his European agent, Theodore Puskas, as a sample. His plan was to have similar machines made in France for sale at the Universal Exposition in Paris, starting in May. Puskas contracted with a Parisian machinist and electrical engineer, ADME. Is that his first name or is that an abbreviation? Edme Hardy, EDME. That's very interesting. Edme Hardy, to produce these small phonographs, essentially similar to the American machines made by Sigmund Bergman. The Hardy phonographs were modified with a different adjustment for centering the stylus and had a small horn in the mouthpiece to concentrate the sounds. Reportedly, 500 were produced for sale at 200 francs, $40 each. Although they apparently were quite successful, the total quantity actually sold is unknown. Replicas are reported to have been made in Europe in the 1900s. However, specific details are unknown. Wow. Patent plate on the rear of the bed plate lists both Edison and Hardy, as well as a serial number. Huh, $40. How do you like that? I can't think of any other. Yeah. Mr. Oliphant was kind enough to bring one of the original Hardy phonographs.
Steve, why don't you tell us a story about your phonograph?
Yeah, where'd you get that, Steve?
Original owner?
Oh, brother.
Come on.
Well, in the 1990s, well, what did the stuff in Dr. Drake's stuff sold? What was that?
The headphones or no? What do you?
No, I don't remember, but it would have
Oh, he's
been.
looking at me.
It had to be in the 90s somewhere.
Yeah, 89, 90, something like that.
There was a large collection in Indiana. His name was Dr. Drake, and some guys from Europe bought the collection, and their plans were to send the machines to Europe to get them, you pick which one you want. So he says, well, I'll just pick the one that's in front of me, the closest one to me, which was what ended up happening. I think the story was that was the lowest serial number, and the one that I ended up was the highest serial number. My brother and I ended up with. So that was kind of interesting. And then years later, Ray decided to sell us machines, and we ended up buying it back. So things go around in a circle, and it's just interesting how things happen. It's just like that tinfoil that Joe tuned up for me that I bought at an auction. I had no idea about that letter until Joe was playing his papers to get ready for this, and there it fell out.
Like it was meant to be.
What did it say?
What's that?
Oh, you were on the road.
Oh, you weren't here.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I have a question about
I'll
transporting these
I'll
things
show
out
you the
of
letter.
the
You can
airport.
read it. It's quite something.
I mean, I don't know, you wouldn't want to have them out of your possession too much, I suppose. How do you ship them over an airplane today?
Oh, I carried them on the plane.
Do you care, what year was this?
In the 90s.
Oh.
This letter fell out of Ray's
I've
fingers.
carried original tinfoil
Stressed
machines
him
that
a
I
lot.
bought in different parts of the United States, expensive Class M phonographs, and what I learned is I carry duffel bags that are really heavy, and I usually, as soon as I get past, my brother won't buy me first class, so I have to sit in the back. So as soon as I pass first class, the first available overhead things, I put those things in there, and I just walk to the back of the plane, and I thank God that I'm not sitting in the seat above those. But that's the story about that particular machine and the one that Joe reproduced.
It was, I found out, I phoned Wayne this morning.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, he was very gracious, and he said the reason he gave up his collection was due to ill health. And he said it came damaged in shipping.
Oh, is that what
Never
happened?
worked.
Oh.
And he never said anything to Ray. And I said, I wish you had, I would have fixed it for you. But something happened to it. But he kept it in memory of his son. So, another thing should be said about Ray Phelps. I guess there are no working original E. Hardy tinfoils, as far as I know. Is that correct? because they're so valuable in their original state, to alter them to make them work might damage their value. So when Ray came to me with his original, I said that to him. I said, are you sure you want me to take it apart and make patterns? I mean, I'm going to have to spray the outside with a special coating so the paint doesn't get damaged and so the rubber won't stick. And he goes, it's more important to me that we make 25 or whatever, you know, that collectors can have that will actually be out there, that they're not afraid to touch and play with. And I'll sacrifice one if I have to. And I said, well, trust me, I'm not going to let anything happen to the original. I had a few sleepless nights while that thing was in the mold. Oh my God. I was expecting, you know, to take the mold apart and have all the paint off the thing. But Ray says that's just what it's going to take, you know. So he was like the brave soul that was willing to sacrifice his machine. And then when he found out they actually would work, he was even that much happier. So.
Great job.
Yeah, well, thank you.
We have one.
Do you? Now, does it work?
Yes.
Good.
Used it this morning.
You know, and you know the trick, I was going to make up instructions and somehow they never got into, but you know, have you had to adjust the needle yet?
No.
Okay, if you do, make sure that's what this serration is for. You loosen this ring until the diaphragm is absolutely untrapped so it can float. And then what I do is, you know, I take a piece of foil and I tape it to the mandrel. Just, you know, I'm not going to use original, but I just tape it on here, and then I close the gate and I just tick. I just start the needle halfway in here until it comes off the edge, and then I look under magnification to see A, how deep the needle is, and B, if it's touching the side of the mandrel. It's got to be dead nuts right in the center. Okay, so you can adjust that by loosening this serrated ring here, and very, very delicately undoing the screw in the back there and tapping it with a hammer, just ever so slightly to get it centered. And then check it again, and then check it again, and then tighten the screw, and then check it again. And then your depth, of course, is controlled by this screw here. And once you do that, then you tighten this and you lock your diaphragm back in. Oh yeah, you'll get a good fidelity. Is it loud? Is it pretty loud?
No.
Now, are you shouting into the horn?
Well, I don't have a horn like that.
Oh,
I just
okay.
use the mouthpiece.
Because those pictures of Edison shouting into a collecting, usually it's a paper cone it looked like he was using. But in that Ford book, it mentions Edison screaming into phonographs, screaming into tinfoils. So I don't know, are there any books on that, on etiquette, tinfoil etiquette, how to record?
Remember, he was deaf.
That's true, he was deaf. Huh? Yeah. Maybe that's why he had a horn.
Where do you get the aluminum foil that you use?
I get it from Alcoa Aluminum. They have a division which sells commercial sheets of commercial aluminum. And I'll give you, you know, I'm happy to share the information if anybody wants that. It's very reasonable, not to,
How thick is it?
it's about 1 mil thick, maybe 1.5. It's 1.5 mils.
Heavy-duty aluminum foil.
1,500. I'm sorry?
We've been using heavy-duty aluminum foil. That's
You know, I have never tried that, but you might just try heavy-duty aluminum foil. It may work.
It works.
Does it?
That's what I've been using.
Then there you go.
You can use aluminum foil, but what you do is you burnish it before
Okay.
you put it on the mandrel. So what you do is you get a flat surface, and you get a piece of wood that's also flat, and you burnish it so that it's absolutely flat.
Okay.
Then you put it on the machine, and the results will be there.
Well, thank you.
Joe, is the Alcoa, is it a different type?
Yes, it's a specific.
Preparation like cold rolled or what?
It's a specific alloy that's different than the foil you buy in the market. Yes, it's a foil that work hardens as it's worked. It gets harder. And it's a fine line between destroying the needle and, you know, you get to that point, but how many times are you going to play that thing? Not 10,000 times, you know. And the needles are adjustable. You can keep bringing the needle down into the mandrel. And needles aren't that hard to make, so I can make more needles for anybody that might need one.
What was the warranty on the machine when you sold it?
Actually, it was 1 year. I told Ray 1 year, guaranteed. Yeah. The problem is I don't know what happened in shipping. You know, I'm sure there were some others that got damaged. If this one got damaged, I'm sure there were others. but I don't think, did Ray ever hear?
There was a power model that got damaged too.
Oh, really? Oh, boy.
The guy that was assigned on the boats, he was in,
Oh, that was the Creeder, Phil Creeder. He was a priest, a minister.
Yeah.
That's right. He was a priest, actually, Catholic priest. What happened with that?
I think you ended up fixing it.
Maybe I fixed it. He must have sent it. I think he sent the reproducer to me and I rebuilt it. Yeah. I hope. I hope. Built a lightning. But, yeah.
Should be shipped to styrofoam.
Thank you. Well, I don't know. Is there anything else?
I have another question here.
Sure.
How's the needle attached to the diaphragm?
The needle? Okay.
How do you change the needle?
All right. Well, it's quite an operation. What I did was I was experimenting with different types. Ray's had been modified. There was a little, it looked like there was a little piece of metal in there, like a spring, and then it had like an eraser between it and the diaphragm. And the little piece of metal, which was pretty heavy, had a needle soldered to it. And when I manufactured a reproduction of that, it didn't have the fidelity that this has. And what I found was, now maybe you guys can identify this, I found this in a patents file. I don't know if this is one of Edison's drawings or what, but it shows a diaphragm. This is a very early tinfoil, looks like phonograph, that was weight driven. And the diaphragm system was similar, I think, to, what's his name's, Bell, Alexander Graham Bell. It's a mica with, it looks like a rod with a rubber. See, they put rubber here. So what I did is, well, let's see. I took a spring, very thin spring material like this, about 20 thousandths, and I stripped it to the width, very thin width, drilled a hole in it. I took a regular phonograph needle, and then under magnification, I very carefully balled the end. I blunted the end like the tin foil so it wouldn't tear the foil, and made it, of course, go well into the grooves. You don't want it riding on the sides or anything, on the grooves of the mandrel. Soldered it in a specific length, and then was the problem. How do you attach that to the diaphragm? And so what I did was, I ran it directly into the diaphragm and glued it to the diaphragm. Didn't work. So then I took a little piece of rubber like Ray's had, and I put a little piece of rubber in between the needle and the diaphragm and glued the rubber to the diaphragm. Didn't work. It just was muddy and murky. You couldn't understand it. So looking at this, I'm seeing how this is attached directly to the diaphragm here. It looks like it's attached somehow, or it's touching the diaphragm, the metal portion, this little pin. See, it looks like this pin goes through the diaphragm. That's what I used. So I pushed the pin, you see, through the diaphragm, but I found a special piece of neoprene rubber tubing that I put in between the spring and the diaphragm that just slightly bows the spring out away from the diaphragm. That gives a pretension onto the diaphragm. Then I used an aircraft glue, which is a rubberized glue, which bonded the needle to the mica. And that kind of made the flexibility. It took away that tinny mechanical metal sound that I was getting from metal to metal or metal to mica. And it works. It worked quite well. In fact, we gave a demonstration at this Nethercutt Museum, and I recorded onto it and played it back, and the whole audience gasped. I was even surprised how loud it was in that dead room. And somebody came up to me later after the show and said, "Okay, buddy, where's the speaker? Where did you hide the speaker?" I said, "No, that's phonograph." He said, Come on, I wasn't born yesterday, okay?" And I said, "Oh, okay, well, let me show you where the speaker is. Come here a minute." And so I said, "Here." I actually hide the speaker down here. Look, just put your ear right here. And they wound it back. They went, "Oh, jeez." I said, No, it's actually on that foil. I made a mistake." He goes, "Wow, that's really cool." You made him believe in his ear. No, he didn't believe me. He does now. Yeah, made a believer out of him, yeah. So, it's like anything else. You know, when these things first came out, they must have been, what I read in, I think it's Streak of Luck, when Edison was recording in one of these offices, people were just plowing into the office, just climbing over each other to hear this thing. And it must have been such a wondrous, can you imagine hearing the human voice mechanically reproduced for the first time? It just must have been a wonder, just an absolute wonder. like the motion picture projector. It's just a wonder. Imagine bringing light, electric light, to a dark room. It's just amazing, just amazing. Yeah. So this is the kind of technology that put men on the moon. Right there. Yeah.
It starts.
Yeah.
Joe, when did you record that with Huell Hauser?
That was done in 2005? Yeah, it was before I made the Hardy phonograph, which was 2006. I think it was a year before, 2004, 2005, yeah. Huell was a hoot. He was funny, but you know, when the cameras were off, he was very serious. His accent kind of went away, and he spoke very quiet. He'd say, now look, I'm not going to tell you what to say, but speak from your heart. I'm going to ask you a question, and then you have to keep your mouth shut and answer me, okay? That's the rule. But he was nice about it. You know, he said, and that's it. He said, just say whatever you want to say, but I'm going to ask you some questions, and then just please answer me. I said, okay. So he goes, okay, you ready? You ready, Cameron? And he goes, 1, 2, 3. He goes, hi, everybody, this is Huell Hauser. The cornpone comes on, you know, the switch went on, you know. What is it? The dogs are yowling, the cats are scurrying under the couch. Where does he come up with this stuff? But he was funny. He drew a good audience, and he taught us a lot of neat stuff, you know. Took us to places we'll never get to go to see.
This whole show was just him and his cameraman.
Him and his cameraman. I expected an entire crew to show up.
And they would go to some place to find an idea or to interview a person.
Yep.
No production, no direction, no script, nothing.
Huell did it all in his head.
Just get to know him a little bit so he'd know what to ask and direct, and then he'd just shoot it.
He said,
no retakes.
He goes, what is that thing over there? And I said, that's a photo player. This is before he's filming. He goes, play that thing for me, play it. And then so I did the thing, wild stuff. He goes, oh my God, that's great. Okay, Cameron, let's get this filmed. So then he goes over in the corner with his microphone, and he's like talking to himself. So he's like putting in his head how he's gonna introduce. And that's when he came up, we're gonna break all the rules. We're not gonna, you know, blah, blah, blah. We're gonna do something different. So yeah, he just came up off the cuff. And he didn't tell me what to say. I made a mistake. You may have noticed I called that projector a phonograph. And I said, I want to reshoot that. I made a mistake. He goes, absolutely not. We don't do any retakes. It's one shot, one take, that's it. That's how he did it, which is great, you know. Yes?
When you were playing the machine, and you're pulling and pushing and all of that, does that come scripted, or do you make the sound?
Well, that's just brain damage.
So you don't play it the same way twice, I would imagine.
No. In fact, you know what? I've never played that role since that time. I've never had a desire to play that role again. So.
It was fascinating.
It was fun. It was a fun experience with Huell. He was really funny. Yeah.
Did it take you a while to learn how to play that?
Well, yeah. I've had the machine about almost 40 years. And the first 10 years, I get kind of like hand in glove. You know, you get real familiar with it. Yes, sir.
How many picture rolls were there, and how many are you still missing?
Okay, there were 1,300 picture rolls made. Picture rolls are those piano rolls that you heard, and what they are, picture rolls are much like a phonograph record, but they're specific tunes, like villain music, chase music, love scene music, like Sob Sister, Sob music, Mushy music. They made 1,300 of these things. Most of them sound god-awful, just terrible. But they're for background music for film. They weren't meant to be standalone items. They made 1,300 now. I'm at 1,180.
Wow.
Excuse me. I just bought 35. Just bought a collection of 35. So I'm missing 74. Missing 74. There's 12 I know where they are. The rest of them are absolutely unknown. We don't know where they are. I even borrowed one from Mike. Thank you. That was Hot Time in the Old Town tonight.
We don't forget
And I made a recut of it, and I offered it to collectors that were missing that roll. So sometimes it comes down to one roll surviving, you know, being in existence. You know, it's funny, Huell Hauser, his producer came up before, and they did a little prelim, you know, they say, here's what we're going to do. He's going to show up. You're going to do this, so just, you know, whatever. Okay, so they go, don't feed him, they said. I said, what do you mean? He says, he's going to ask for donuts and crawlers. Don't give him anything like that. We're trying to keep him on a diet. So when he comes up to the house, first thing he said, have any donuts? I'm like, sorry, Mr. Hauser. He went, oh. That was his one weakness, I think. Oh, my goodness gracious, yeah. Yeah, it was an experience. He filmed for 3 hours, and you know, you're never sure what he's going to do, you know, and so I never heard anything from him anymore. And I called, and he came to the phone, and I said, "When's that show going to be on?" He goes, "Don't worry, it's coming out." I said, "Can I see an advance copy?" He goes, "Absolutely not. You're going to see it when it's on TV." I said, well, what happens if there's? What are you going to do? And he goes, "Don't worry, I'm not 60 Minutes." He says, "I'm going to show you in a good light, regardless of the facts." So he did have a sense of humor. And you know, I think he did a great job for preservation, the way they edited it. He did a very good job.
Log on to YouTube, there's like, what, 20 or 30 or...
Oh my God, yeah. Some guy came up, Scott Lasky came up to the house, and he goes, "I'm gonna film a couple rolls. 8.5 hours later, we did 40.
Oh, they're great. Watch
He's
them
posted
all.
them all on there. Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
What do you Google it under?
What's that?
Joe Rinaudo.
Just Joe Rinaudo?
Oh yeah, just go, YouTube Joe Rinaudo or Joe Rinaudo Photo Player, and all these Scott Lasky things will come up. Even the Huell Hauser is on there. Huell posted that on there too. It was an honor. So anyway, an honor speaking to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Joe, for sharing your remarkable life accomplishments.
Oh my goodness. I'd like to present you with an honorary.
Oh, I need that. And it's signed, autographed by you.
It is. Oh.
How did
Isn't she sweetheart? Huh?
How did you two guys meet?
Oh my gosh, we met in
School.
it was junior high, wasn't it? God. Junior high.
We grew up.
We grew up together with Phonograph records and old movies, and her dad, Dave, was a sweetheart. I'd buy movies from him.
Yes, and my dad absolutely fell in love with Joe. Joe became the brother I had never had. My dad wanted a son, and all he had was 3 girls. When he met Joe, it was love at first sight. That was, if he could have stolen you away from your mom and dad, he would have.
Is that why I was always washing his car? No. No, they were a wonderful family. We had a good time. Yeah.
Oh, we should tell them about the movie that when Dad was
Oh
adjusting that.
no! Should I? Should I do that? Oh God!
That would be.
I'd go over there, and I would buy movies from her dad, right? 16mm films. So we'd go in this back bedroom, and Elaine's mom would be in the front room reading usually a Bible or some religious material, and she'd go, "Hello, Mr. Rinaudo." I go, "Hello, Mrs. Labby. How are you?" "Fine, thank you." So I'd go in the back, and Dave would have his projector all set up. So we're watching these Mickey Mouse cartoons. We're laughing, and so all of a sudden, the Mickey Mouse cartoons end, and this must have been a reel from a men's club comes on. Now, by today's standards, it's tame. It was women in skin-tight, like bikinis, doing these somersaults and stuff, these gyrations. And we're both stunned watching. And Mrs. Labby comes in with her Bible, and she says, "Oh, by the way," and she looks up on the wall, and there's these women somersaulting. And Dave, without thinking, without missing a beat, grabs a piece of like a magazine or a piece of paper, puts it in front of the lens, and "See how close I can get this focus?" And she starts hitting him with the book. "Nasty, nasty, 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 nasty." And he's going, "Yes, you see," as he's fending off the blows, "how close I can get the focus on this lens." Women somersaulting on the magazine. Anyway, she storms out of the room, and I said, "Dave, is there any other way out?" He goes, "No, I'm afraid you're going to have to pass the gauntlet of death." So I tiptoed out the living room. She's there reading. She looks up. "Oh, I never daggers. If looks could kill." She gave me the dirtiest. She goes, "You're a nasty young man. You're a nasty boy." "Sorry, Miss Labby." I can imagine what that dinner must have been like.
Oh, I can only imagine.
Anyway,
But
that was pretty funny.
but we all love you.
Oh, thank you. We love you. So,
And so when I'm watching an old movie, like Mr. Friend shows his old movies, and there's playing an old tune playing in the background, I know what's going to happen next.
It reminds me of Laurel and Hardy, remember? I had Elaine over, and we ran a silent Laurel and Hardy called Wrong Again, where Laurel and Hardy mistakenly bring a horse named Blue Boy, who the owner of the house thinks it's the Blue Boy painting, but Laurel and Hardy think it's the horse, and he says, "Put it on the piano." So they end up putting this horse on top of this guy's piano, destroy his house. Anyway, I watched the film maybe 100 times. I had Elaine over. And it was one of the rare 7 that they made in 1929 that had no dialogue, but it had musical track, original musical track recorded by the MGM Orchestra in 1929. Every tune spoke the scene. So there's a scene where Ollie throws a pail off of a wagon. Oh, let's go in a buggy ride.
Yeah, something like
and then
that.
the old oaken bucket when he's filling the water, and then the horse.
And horses, the song horses.
All these crazy things. So it was like, what, about 60 different cues, and she knew almost every tune, and it fit the action. I was on the floor. Well, that's one of my favorite films.
Yes.
Anyway.
What's the name of that film?
Wrong Again.
There's another Laurel and Hardy film where they're street musicians.
Oh, yes.
And it's in the middle of winter, and they're playing in the good old summertime.
Yes, that's right.
You know, and it's a great
It's called
scene.
It's Below Zero,
Yeah, Below
1930.
Zero.
Yeah,
That's
and then the
great.
woman throws up the window and says, "Oh, Mr. Whiteman," and like Paul Whiteman. "Yes, ma'am." She says, "How much you make a street?" "Oh, about 25 cents." She goes, "Here's 50 cents. Why don't you move a block over?" So she is the queen of. I'm going to have you listen to all the silent tracks,
I would
soundtracks.
and hardly wait.
We should record. Thank you, Lane.
That was actually what Harold Lloyd said to Gaylord Carter, hanging on the clock.
You've probably all seen that clip from the Harold Lloyd movie where he's hanging on the clock off the side of the building. It looks like he's, several stories above the street below and all of that. And one of our favorite theater organists, late theater organist, Gaylord Carter, actually accompanied those Harold Lloyd movies. And so when Harold Lloyd was hanging on to the hand on the clock like this, Gaylord started playing Time on My Hands, the popular song of the day. And Harold Lloyd said, "I'll make the jokes here, not you."
He was in the audience just to see how people were reacting to this movie.
Yeah. So with today's movies, I can't see anything that I can relate to the experience then of using the popular music. It's just custom music, background music for that movie or something. But it was such a richer experience.
It was. Speaking of Gaylord Carter, I was at one of his shows one time when he did Big Business. Where they smashed the guy's house and he smashes their car. They're selling Christmas trees. There's a scene where Stan pulls a piano out and starts hacking at it, and Gaylord Carter plays "I Love a Piano." Now, what year was that song?
That was before that, because that goes back.
Oh yeah, that's the mid-teens.
"I Love a Piano" is pre-World War I.
It's pretty close.
Yeah. Okay, I just wondered if it was contemporary. I thought that was pretty funny. Gaylord had that ability, like you.
And Dean Mora.
Dean Mora is wonderful. Yeah, he does do that. It's funny, you'll see a scene, and there's a little dog running in the background, and he's playing in a minor key, and all of a sudden he'll work in, "Oh, where's my little dog gone?" in the minor, in the same key. Most of the audience, the younger people, don't have a clue because they don't know the songs like we do, because we know the old records and the piano rolls. They all go hand in hand. They were all entertainment at the turn of the century. It's wonderful.
As Gaylord said, the movies were never silent.
That's right.
They spoke through the music.
That's right. You're only watching half the show. You're watching a silent film. And they weren't called silent films. They were called motion pictures. The music came along. Photo plays. That's right.
Well, thank you all for joining us this afternoon. I hope you had fun. A couple of quick questions. Was this location in Burbank, was it convenient, or did you have to drive a long way from where you are?
Convenient for you. Yeah, it's good for us West Siders.
It's a nice Who came from the south side of the hill? Who came from the north side of the hill? The valley versus...
Someone said they were from Victorville. Anybody that far away from?
Wow, Victorville?
Victorville, that's a committed
Wow,
couple there.
that's a long drive.
Was it worth it?
Yeah.
Good pizza.
Is this presentation part of the series, or is it a one-time thing?
I wanted to do a special meeting, and if we had a good response and people were interested and it was a convenient location, come up with some other interesting subjects and just use it in addition. I know GSPS has its, bi-monthly meetings or every other month meetings. But just do something special in addition to that, something that's maybe educational, showing things you might not have seen before, fun, whatever, surprising.
That's good.
And a suggestion, bring your friends and bring young people. The only way this is going to get preserved and perpetuated is to indoctrinate young people to get the fever that we got 20, 30, 40 years ago.
Well, I'm going to ask the young gentleman in the back there to stand up and tell us who he is, because...
How did you get interested in phonographs? What made your
I was brainwashed at an early age. My name's Jacob Horowitz, and my dad got, he always played the records, and my mom's the early, it was actually just 50s and 60s music, not even that old compared to what the group here has been talking about. But for the last 5 years, I've been restoring and repairing turntables, including Edison cylinder machines, and going all the way till contemporary machines. And I do this in Culver City at my uncle's studio, History of Recorded Sound. His name's Len Horowitz, and Len and Joe know each other, and that's how I learned about this event today. So I was born a long time ago. I look younger, but my car out front is from 1960. I drive a Falcon, and I don't even have an iPod. I barely got a CD player, because my day job is working at a record label. We make CDs and now vinyl records. And so my boss got me a CD player because all I had were records before that. In college, I played 16mm and 8mm films for my friends, and they'd come over, once a week, and we'd do, half an hour of films. No one else is doing that probably all over campus. So that's just a quick background about me and why I am here and why I'm into all of this.
Do you find that any of your friends are interested in the same things you are? Your contemporaries?
Well, my closest friends all have record players now.
Okay, good. You're spreading the word.
They've either gotten them against their will, or or because they've asked me, can you help me find a good record player? And if it's an apartment, maybe they'll have a portable suitcase thing. Maybe it's a nicer system. But my close friends do, and because I do record player repair, and I was advertising on Craigslist for a while, I was surprised that my audience, my market was people in their 20s and people in their 60s. It was, no one. It was two different groups. People who had the record players already for 30 years, but they'd been in the garage rusting or the equivalent. And then 20-year-olds that just wanted to get into it for the first time, wanted to have bought a console on Craigslist and wanted it to be working. So there are a lot of young people that I hear with that are getting into. But again, it's still 1% of the whole entire music market.
Well, I hope you'll be able to come to the Antique Phonograph Society's 30th anniversary show and sale on August 9th and 10th.
Well, I look forward to it. I've gone a few times in the past, and thank you for letting me introduce myself.
Cool. Thank you, each and every one, for coming and for joining in and asking questions, participating, and hopefully enjoying the afternoon. Thank you.
What time? 90, yeah. That's right.
Are you out in?
Nice to have you.
Are you Santa Clarita or Newhall, or where are you located? Really? You have a Cremona? And what does it play? What type of role? 88?
It plays a Cremona. Yeah, it plays 188 and 1S.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm looking at you. 6 is mine.
Good job.
Oh, those are
It's like a 45.
I didn't know we had it.
Yeah. Boy, it all grows.
I really like music.
Remember it? Yeah, it's up and playing. It's as big as a 45.
Just something about me, like a boat.
How many controls do you have?
Could be that
Could be the one I'm looking for. Plus, I have.
Yeah.
That's it, that's me. I'm restoring a big one for the, I donated it to the Academy, we hired a company. That's all, fireman and monsters. It's twice, it's almost 3 times the size of the one at the house. It's really neat. So anyway, well, great, maybe I'll see Park Place, between Broadview and Cleveland.
Well, I'm gonna talk to Jen.
Are you up there?
Yeah, I'm looking sick.